New developments tonight on General Michael Flynn's surprising offer to testify before Congress on the Trump team's possible ties to Russia in exchange for immunity. The president's former national security advisor was ousted last month for misleading the White House on his contacts with Russia's ambassador. He's now seeking immunity because his lawyer says he has a story to tell, but wants assurances he won't be unfairly prosecuted in a, quote, highly politicized witch hunt environment. Several months back, General Flynn characterized immunity deals as admissions of guilt.
There's no individual too big to jail. That should include people like Hillary Clinton. I mean, 5 people around her have been given immunity, to include her former chief of staff. When you are given immunity, that means that you've probably committed a crime.
Maybe not. President Trump once said something similar, though, about the Clinton camp. Does he think Flynn's guilty of a crime? Well, here was Sean Spicer's answer earlier.
He believes that Mike Flynn should go testify.
With or without immunity?
Well, I mean, that's up to him and his lawyer to decide. I'm not going to give Mike Flynn or anyone else legal advice from the podium, but I will tell you that the president's view is he should go up there, he should testify.
But the president gave legal advice from his Twitter account. He has said in the past that the only reason you ask for immunity is if you committed a crime.
Right, but I think that the underlying point that you're missing, Jonathan, respectfully, is that what he's asking is go testify. Go get it out there. Do what you have to do to get there and tell Congress and tell everyone exactly what we've been saying for a long time. This doesn't look at an administration that's not doing everything it can to get to the bottom of this in the appropriate way. And I think that that is an important distinction that has been lost on a lot of you.
All right, so when last we left you, after One More Thing last night, we did not know about this immunity offer. It came right after we left, Eric. And it is important to say, even though when you're talking about your partisan opponents, you might say that it means you're guilty of a crime. Immunity does not mean that. And immunity can take a lot of different forms. But this wasn't necessarily the best way to get this story off the front page, so to speak.
Well, so here's the way I read this is a good lawyer will always instruct you to ask for immunity. I mean, that is a great option for the person who's going to be standing there and may open himself to a lot of risk. No matter what you say, in this hearing, it can be used against you in one of the other hearings or something else, or the Turkish issue that he may have going on. So, of course, you're going to ask for immunity. I think it's unfortunate that he said if you're granted immunity, you're guilty of something. I don't know where that came from. Maybe it was just rhetoric during the campaign. But, yeah, I think it's smart for him to do that. But here's the question. So you have something. He has something. He has information, and it's got a value. Does the Senate committee or do any of the committees think it's valuable enough to offer him immunity? It looks like they're not going to give it to him. But, again, to unmask someone, you have to have a reason and you have to have clearance. Then to go public like they did with Michael Flynn's name, that's a felony. So someone is going to be in a lot of trouble when they find out who unmasked and then went public with Michael Flynn's name.
That's true, because the White House today, Greg, they're wanting the press to focus on the unmasking issue instead of the meddling. Yeah. And people on the other side are saying, no, the meddling is what's important, the unmasking is secondary, even though they often agree that it was wrong and a crime.
You know what? It's like a two-man race. Which one to the evidence? The race is between the people who believe in the collusion. They want that to be true. There's the other side that says, no, it's the leak. And the leak is slightly ahead because it appears there's more evidence about the leak than there is about collusion. But back to the immunity question. If he really wanted immunity, would he have asked for it publicly? I mean, if you really wanted something, I would hit them up privately if I had a succulent secret stash, but I'm going by what I know. Okay. I'm not speculating, Dana.
You're so responsible.
I am. I really am. But it's like publicly asking for immunity is like publicly asking for drugs. No one is going to say, sure, here, have it, because it's bad form. By the way, why can't we just have immunity for everything? It's like, why is it just when you have to talk in court?
Like what, though?
What do you want it from?
Yeah, what do you want it?
Relationship, work.
How does that work, though?
You just want to be by yourself?
Exactly. See, women would never grant you immunity.
Let me take a quick look at... no, they wouldn't.
No chance.
This is Congressman Chaffetz, who was on earlier today talking about whether he, as one of the chairmen of the committees on the House side, thinks that immunity should be granted.
I don't think it's a witch hunt. Look, it's very mysterious to me, though, why all of a sudden General Flynn is suddenly out there saying he wants immunity. I don't think Congress should give him immunity. If there's an open investigation by the FBI, that should not happen. I also don't believe that the president should be weighing in on this. They're the ones that actually would prosecute something. I was very critical of President Obama, who weighed in on the IRS scandal before we had all the facts. And I don't think Donald Trump should be weighing in on this. Immunity from what? I mean, we don't know what that is. And so it's up to the Intel Committee.
Okay, so Juan, having been, not you, but speaking of myself, having been in the trenches, having to answer questions every day about an ongoing investigation in which the FBI was involved at the White House, I was advised by lawyers and people around no comment, and just stall in the briefing room, say no comment while an ongoing investigation was underway, because even though that caused short-term pain in the press, it was better in the long run for the investigation and for anybody at the White House or others who might have been involved. I think that even if that was the instinct of the White House, so in the press office, it's hard to do when the president is weighing in. And so now you have an additional layer of the president saying basically that they're very much public on this investigation.
So what struck me was when the president called this a witch hunt. Because if you say it's a witch hunt, you could say, oh, well, you know, he's talking about those evil Democrats, or he's talking about that terrible media, that failing New York Times, that awful Washington Post, or whatever. But in fact, when you say this, you're really talking about the intelligence agencies. You're really talking about the people who've been gathering information. You're talking about the Congress.
You don't think he's not just talking about the press and
No,
the Democrats?
because guess what? They're not conducting an investigation and asking Michael Flynn to come in. It's the intelligence agencies and the committees that are asking Michael Flynn to tell his story. And if Michael Flynn just is going to tell the truth, why does Donald Trump, the president, think, oh, yeah, go ahead and seek immunity? I think this really complicates matters. And obviously, on the surface, let's just stick with that for a second, it just doesn't look good. And I think that's what you heard from Republicans during the campaign with regard to Clinton. It just doesn't look good because people may say, you know, where there's smoke, there's fire. But at the moment, the real problem is that you have a president who decides, unlike Sean Spicer, who was wise enough to say he doesn't give legal advice from the podium, the president is spewing legal advice in a way that would suggest there's something being hidden.
What do you think of this, Lisa? Because the unmasking issue is a very serious one. But even if you solve and we get the answers, let's say in an hour, like we did last night, to the unmasking issue, the underlying investigation about the alleged collusion is still there. So what do you think they're up to?
Well, right. And then all we've seen is really circumstantial evidence that the Democrats have put forward. But I don't think you could say it's a witch hunt, obviously, because there's an ongoing FBI investigation. We don't know the full scope of that, but you just cannot ignore that issue as a whole. But I mean, I do think if you're the White House, it's got to be frustrating in the sense that, you know, this other side of the coin, nobody seems interested in, right? The media doesn't seem as interested in the unmasking of Americans' names. They don't seem as interested in the illegal leak of information. That being said, if you're the president, you're not really doing yourself a service or doing yourself any favors by keeping this information out in the media and tweeting something like that out today, because guess what? There are a whole host of issues that Americans care a lot about, like finding a replacement and passing a replacement plan for health care, like tax reform, like getting Neil Gorsuch, which is one of the main drivers, or at least of a lot of conservatives to vote for President Trump, to get him confirmed. And so when you're putting this information out there, when there are already so many questions, so much information out there already, you really aren't doing yourself any favors. So if the president's watching, please stop doing that.
You know, I was just going to say, the other reason why calling it a witch hunt is wrong is it's an attack on witches. No, seriously. You think about witches.
They have rights, too. Nobody cares about them.
They were unfairly tortured and murdered. And we act like we're comparing everything to a witch hunt. No, witch hunts were bad.
No, that's talking about the hunters of the witches. Witch hunt refers to them, not the witch.
I still think it's inappropriate. You people make me sick.
You were going to say something.
Before we move on, the immunity issue, you know who deserves, who they should definitely offer immunity to, and I think the Trump organization would love to see this as well, offer immunity to Evelyn Farkas. I talked about her the other day and again yesterday. Now, this is someone who I think should have immunity. She knew too much. She was out of the White House when she contacted the Obama administration suggesting that there was surveillance going on of the Trump administration. Why is that? Who did you know? And how did you get that information? And who did you pass it on to? Boy, I think there's someone who should be immune from prosecution because she is holding a lot of the cards.
And if you're Flynn, I mean, can you blame him for, especially given how hyper-partisan all this has become on both sides of the fence, just the sheer amount of attention this is giving, the fact that there's an FBI investigation. I mean, I don't blame the guy for trying to seek an immunity deal, and that's essentially what his attorney said in a statement, is he said that no reasonable person would essentially subject themselves to this line of questioning, given the fact, the political nature of this, given the amount of attention it is, without assurances against prosecution. So, I mean, you don't. It's obviously unfortunate that he had made those comments before, because it sure doesn't look good today. That being said, you can't blame the guy, given all these other circumstances, for wanting to seek some sort of deal.
Well, that's the difference between legal advice and campaign rhetoric.
Right.
Right.
Well, yeah.
By the way, that was interesting what you had to say about witch hunts. I hadn't thought of that. That was a good point. Did you hear that, Gregory? It's about the hunter.
You don't want to go
not
there,
the witch.
Juan.
All right. But I will say this. I think the person who should be given immunity may be President Trump.
Ooh.
You know why? I mean, he's a guy who apparently knew what was going on, knew about the deception being perpetrated by Flynn, and took him 3 weeks to get rid of Flynn. Wait a second. Why would any president do that to his own vice president, send that message internally to his own staff, unless he felt that Flynn had something on him? Oh, gee.
I don't know about that. We also know that there have been overzealous prosecutors in the past that try to get you on something that is not even related to the original question.
But this, going back to Eric's point, Dana, is under such scrutiny, under the microscope of politics so intensely, there's not going to be any wild-eyed prosecutor who's going to get away with anything here.
But there's two investigations going on. There are three, but two topics. The one being, as you're trying to find some sort of collusion between Trump and the Russians, but the other one being, what's with all with this unmasking and the felonious outing of Americans' names?
You know, I just feel this is part of the White House smoke. They throw up this stuff about leaks, leaks.
It's a
We've been
felony,
leaks
Juan.
for as long as America has been a country, and it's a healthy sign.
For every average American out there, the more important issue will be, what do you mean Americans, maybe possibly innocent Americans' names were outed? Can you
no. Wait a minute. Did you say that's
we have another block on this.
Than Russians?
I would say that is. I think it affects more people.
Oh, my God.
This is the race I'm talking about.
And here they go. They're on the race.
I watch a lot of Law and Order. It's always the rich white guy who's guilty. So I put the money on the rich white guy.
Oh, yeah? It's a good thing it's not a horror movie.
Reasoning there is
very good.
Really,
if it was a
Hollywood.
horror movie, the black guy'd be gone.
My last
Nicely done.
My reading assignment is something that Eric just brought up about Ellen Farkas. Philip Bump of the Washington Post wrote a piece today about her, and you can find it at WashingtonPost.com.